Becca, hit us up with a song. It's your turn.
Snap Out a Bit by Arctic Monkeys.
I've got no idea what that is, so you'll have to sing it.
I have to sing it? Why do I have to sing it?
That's
so
just
I
the way
know what it is.
No, I don't know. I wish I'd not picked this song now.
I wanna grab both shoulders and shake, baby. Snap out of it. I get the feeling I left it too late, but baby, snap out of it. If that watch don't continue to swing, I'll look back, lady, fancy's having a sing. I'll be here waiting ever so patiently for you to snap out of it.
Welcome to Nerdschatting, movie, TV, comic chat. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome everybody to the Nerdschatting podcast. My name is Nate, and with me tonight are my two very good friends, Ben and JB. How you doing, boys?
Hi, Nathan. Hi, James. How are you?
I'm good. Hello, everybody. Cold. It's cold, though. It's cold.
It is very cold. I had very cold toes today. But I should say also, yet again, we have another guest presenter with us. It is Dr. Rebecca. Hello.
Hello again. Returning,
and possibly for the next couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Hello, Dr. Becca. Back by popular demand.
We are the Nerdschatting. We chat about all things nerdy, movies and TV shows and comic books. And for the past couple of weeks, we've been doing the first two parts of a trilogy. We called films that the others haven't seen, or presenting films, showing a film that
Making each other watch films the others haven't seen.
Yeah, that's the catchy title we went with.
In brackets, they're probably crap.
Yes, yeah. I think we're gonna talk today about the third one, my choice, and that's to round off the trilogy. And I think what we can all agree is that these are films that we all thought were better than they actually were. For the first week, we had Strange Days, which was picked by Ben.
Frozen.
Ben, have you frozen?
No, I'm here. Can you see me?
You've frozen.
He is holding that pose.
Yeah, we're gonna take a picture of him quickly.
Really long time.
This is a picture of Ben. Hang on, let's get this.
Oh!
I take it you came back out of the freeze.
Ah, yes.
So the first film was Ben's choice. It was Strange Days, and we all kind of thought it was a missed opportunity, a weird kind of strange movie that had a lot of good stuff in it, but went on far too long to begin with. But yeah. The second film was James's choice, and that was a film called Split Second, which we all pretty much universally thought was trash.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's fair.
you agree,
fair.
JB?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair.
It was dreadful.
This week, I have chosen the 1980s classic Akira.
Tetsuo, you had me worried again. I figured you'd be standing here sobbing like a little baby.
Kaneda, you've always been a pain in the ass, you know. You've been telling me what to do since we were kids. You always treat me like a kid. You always show up and start bossing me around, and don't you deny it!
And now you're a boss, too. Of this pile of rubble.
Kaneda!
That's Mr. Kaneda to you, punk!
Akira, the classic anime adapted from the then halfway through manga of the same title. Had either of you seen it before?
Nope.
I had not seen it before. No, I was aware of its existence, and I'd seen scenes from the ending of it, but I hadn't seen it before. So I had no idea what was going on coming into this movie.
Rebecca, had you seen it before?
No.
Did you know anything about it?
No. I just knew that there were a series of graphic novels because I've seen you reading them.
Yeah, six volumes. So I think what we usually do with this is what we liked, what we didn't like, what's it saying.
Yeah.
But before we do any of that, should we go around the houses, starting with you, James, as an overall opinion of the movie?
Okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. It felt a little confused. I would have liked the pieces of the film to be in a slightly different order. And that might have given me a little bit more understanding, because nothing was terribly obvious.
Well, we should say that we all, I mean, I think you did as well, James. We watched the English dub from the 80s.
Yes. I don't.
And I
Unfortunately, I don't speak Japanese.
Oh, okay, that's a shame. But I think what we can again universally agree is that dub is pretty bad. It's not particularly good acting, voice acting, and also some lines don't seem to follow the previous line. People say some things to each other, but I feel like it's just fit with the mouth movement. I wonder if a more modern dub might improve that. But anyway, before we get into that too much, Ben, what did you think of it?
I think I liked it more than you did, James. I thought it was pretty good. Don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. It's very much of its time. It's very frantic. It's incredibly violent. I didn't think the voice acting was bad at all. And I didn't think that there was any problems with not the dub, but like the words that were coming out of the animated characters' mouths didn't look wrong. It didn't look off. It all felt like it fit. I think the plot was a little bit overly confusing, and I think they possibly brought a little bit too much from the manga, if that's what the graphic novel of this was. So the graphic novel is the manga, and what we saw on the screen is the anime, right?
Yeah.
Do I understand anime now? That's
right. The confusion comes. So the manga is the term for the artwork and the sort of comic books that were released in Japan. When they become animated, they are known as anime. And that confusion comes in that the biggest UK company that produced anime was called Manga Video. So it's manga turned into anime by a company called Manga Video. Very confusing.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was good. I thought it was a little bit overly confusing. I think there are too many characters they brought across from the comic that could have been cut out. I really liked some of the political intrigue towards the end when there's the coup d'état. I quite like that. And the animation and everything that you see on the screen feels very groundbreaking for 1986. Don't get me wrong, what you see in that, you see it is dime a dozen now. You see it like 3 times a day on kids' TV shows on Nickelodeon. But for the time, I would have thought that would have blown my mind if I saw that when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old, you know?
You wouldn't have been allowed to. You wouldn't have been allowed to, Ben. It was a 15.
That's true. What did you think of it, Dr. Rebecca? I think that tells you.
Am I going to be flying the only flag of someone who liked this film? Oh,
no, Nathan did like it.
Okay.
I found it quite interesting at the point where Tatsuo's arm started. Tatsuo's arm started going crazy. Then I found it quite interesting, but that was quite near the end.
That's 7/8 of the movie.
Yeah. Before that, the beginning starts off quite interesting, and we can go into the details of why. The middle section was just explosion after explosion after explosion after explosion after explosion, perhaps intermittently sprinkled with people presumably saying things to each other, but the dubbing was just like they were shouting at each other constantly, to an extent that the shouting at the explosions became so monotonous that I actually fell asleep.
She did.
The constant noise lulled me into a state of slumber.
I turned over at one point and I went, "Are you sleeping?" You went, "Oh, a little bit." Well, let me interject and just I think I'm kind of a little bit of I take a sprinkling from all of your opinions. I didn't like it as much as I remembered enjoying it, but I thought that the action. Sorry, I thought when there was action, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. However, there were also vast amounts of particularly dull dialogue scenes. It's like the writer director who also wrote and drew the comic book, the manga, is fantastic at action and movement and I don't know, like kinetic energy, whatever you want to say. But he just doesn't get dialogue. He just doesn't get. For me, it was he just didn't understand how to do a scene that's dramatic with just two people talking. That was my problem with it.
Yeah, well, his understanding of making it dramatic was just to have them shout at each other.
Exactly. Yeah. But can I? Okay.
Tetsuo Kaneda! That sort of thing, yeah.
That's the whole film. That's the whole film.
And I think if we go to some of the stuff we liked, and James, I'll come back to you in a second, but I just want to just say my overriding feeling is that the opening sequence with the bike chase between the sort of the good guys, if you like, they're not particularly good, and the clown Joker gang, I don't think the film gets any better than that. I think that is an absolutely outstanding bit of cinema. I think everything feels like it's moving incredibly quickly. The lighting is fantastic. It's stylish. It's slick. It's violent. It's action packed. I really, really think it is excellent filmmaking, but I don't think it gets better than that throughout.
Talk about violent. What about the guy who gets the motorbike through the window, drive over the back of his head, who's sat at the dinner table? Well, he's not he's gonna feel that in the morning, isn't he? Bloody hellfire! You know what I mean?
There were a couple of points where you kind of were in that opening sequence. You were like, oh my gosh, weren't you? You were kind of shocked by some of that elements to it. But James, what did you like about the movie?
But
oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, so that opening bit is shocking, but then there are no shades of grey, there's no colour or light and dark. It's just all that one level of intensity. So it starts off shocking, but then you can't sustain somebody's attention if you're going to maintain that for the entirety of a 2-hour film. And that's why I ended up falling asleep, because there's no light and dark, there's no colour, there's no lesser and greater, there's no diversity or contrast between people talking softly and people talking louder. It's just all one pitch, shouting like this, shouting like the grocer on MasterChef, because he shouts everything for some bizarre reason.
It's because he loves the buttery biscuit base, Becca. It's all about the base.
Right. Just bringing it back to things we like here. James, is there anything about the movie that you particularly liked?
Yeah. I mean, the animation is fantastic. And the story actually is very good. I think a very good story. It's just like I said. For me, it was just mismatched a little bit and not easy to follow. I like the interactions of the characters. Kaneda and I'm going to say it wrong. His best mate
Tetsuo.
Yeah, that one. I mean, brother in arms. Look out for one another. That's what it feels like. And then you but then you have like this random sort of small child that was just looked peculiar, but I don't think needed to look peculiar. But anyway, you kind of like, what's going on here? And then
those are the espers, right?
And it was good, and I liked the way that the film started, and it seemed to go at the right pace. But there I go. There's my what I think.
Well, I should say
bike as well. I like Kaneda's bike. I want that bike.
Yes, very cool. I should say, for context, really, before we get to Ben, what you particularly liked about it. Like I said at the beginning, he'd written that. I can not remember the guy's name. It's terrible of me not to remember the director's name. Have you guys got it in front of you at all?
Not right now, no.
Otomo.
A very large helicopter flying over my head.
Oh yeah, it's around as well. That shows how close we are.
Yeah, Otomo.
Yeah, so he'd written the first 3 volumes of this when they commissioned him to make the film. So he hadn't finished it. He hadn't filled out all the backstory, and the film finishes, funnily enough, halfway through the volumes of the manga. The manga has 3 more volumes, which actually happen after the kind of cataclysmic explosion, spoilers for this movie, that happens at the end of this movie.
Oh, right. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and
say that again. What did you say?
so you know, at the end of the film, there's this massive explosion, and Canada's trapped in the light orb and all that stuff. That's halfway through the manga. So the second half, there are 3 more volumes after that, are all set in Tokyo after that, and it's the remnants of Tokyo and all these different gangs and religious sects and all sorts of things start sort of cropping up, and then there's military excursions into Tokyo, and there's different people trying to infiltrate all along the same time as Akira and Tetsuo setting up this kind of empire, where in this scenario Akira is Emperor Palpatine and Tetsuo is Darth Vader. And so there's this whole longer story, and it does kind of end at the same place later on. There is more fights and more big battles and more explosions and screaming at each other.
What a surprise!
But the things like the what you might have noticed in the movie, that was there was kind of like a religious leader, a lady in it, who was you briefly saw die on the bridge, but before that she was sort of rubbing her hands together and someone was painting on the road. Do you remember that bit?
Yeah.
So that character in the manga is huge. She's a major player. She is the one that uses Kei, the female lead, and she's the one that triggers Kei's powers, and she has this religious following with all these monks around her, and she's kind of like, she's the antagonist to Tetsuo. So that's weird that character gets dropped out. But also in the manga, Akira is actually in that tomb. It's not his organs.
Oh, okay.
So when
that
Tetsuo
makes a bit more sense. Yeah.
when Tetsuo breaks it out, Akira is there, and then suddenly he's like, "Oh, what's going on? This is weird." I mean, he doesn't. He barely speaks now. I think he says like 2 or 3 words in the whole 6 volumes. But just so for context, all of that really is just to give context to what you were saying, James, about how you've got these characters like the Espers, like the little kids, where you're like, what are these things? And they're not really explained in the film.
Well, they're not explained,
sort of, but not.
They're not. They are. There's kind of like that flashback scene, isn't there?
Yeah.
But that's the flashback scene to the 4 of them, but including Akira.
Yeah.
And you get some understanding there, and that was me like, oh, okay. I mean, I didn't mind the guessing. I just found it a little bit peculiar that they were like little goblins or something, and I don't know.
Why were they green and wrinkly? Like that needed explaining. Like
that's what I mean. Like in the manga, you get a lot more.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I think that's what it was.
Were they like that because they didn't let their powers overtake them like Tetsuo did, because he came to them a bit later in his life, bit like a Jedi, I guess. You shouldn't learn to become a Jedi if you're past a certain age, because you might fall a bit easier to the dark side. Well, they were young when they developed these powers, and they've kept a childlike innocence, but it's turned them not into mutants, but it's turned them a bit. It's given them a different look, an other look.
Well, I like to think they look like old people, don't they? They look
like old people in little bodies. Yeah, that's right. Like Benjamin Button.
So Ben, what did you specifically like about the film?
I liked the setting. So it opens up and it's Tokyo and it's 1985 or 86, and then a bomb what you suspect is a bomb goes off, and that leads to World War III. And then it flashes forward and it's 2019 and it's Neo Tokyo, but the old city's still there and it's still got the bloody great big crater in it. And I think the setting is a very intriguing one, and it does play into some of those typical tropes that you see in a lot of Japanese cinema, where they are obsessed with, because of what they went through in the Second World War. At the end of the Second World War with Nagasaki and Hiroshima, they are obsessed with things that have an atomic feel to them. So cities are destroyed by these huge events, and then it's how they deal with that as a people, and they always come through the other side, and that's a testament to who they are as a people. But a lot of certainly a lot of cinema that I've seen out of Japan sort of leans into that heavily, and this does the same. And I very much like what it tries to do with that. I love the fact that Neo Tokyo is there, and it's huge, this huge sprawling metropolis that looks a little bit like Blade Runner, but then at the same time you've still got the old part of Tokyo that was completely destroyed, complete with cars lying all over the place, all these abandoned cars, and it's still all sort of there and touching. The fact that it's not radioactive and killing people speaks to what comes later in the story. The fact that, well, it wasn't a bomb, it was actually Akira sort of detonating because he couldn't control himself.
Yeah.
I think I probably would enjoy this more on a second and ultimately even more on a third rewatch. But I have to agree that it's very frenetic, and the start is very good. But like Becca says, the middle part is, like it opens up the throttle of Matey's bike, and it doesn't drop it back down at all. It is a million miles an hour. Kaneda is bike.
That's an interesting insight, because perhaps that's by design, because it is about biker gangs with these super fast bikes who they're so fast that they travel away from the light of their brakes and leave it behind. So it's almost like saying from the off, get on your bike, come with us on this ride, because it's not going to stop. James, you going to say something?
Yeah. I mean, kind of agree with what you're saying there. Also, just talking reminded me that it felt very much like a Mad Max film.
Yeah. I got that.
You mentioned, Nate, about good biker gang and bad biker gang. I kind of slightly disagree with that. I just think they're biker gangs. I don't think they're good or bad.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
It feels like they're. I almost don't know why the biker gangs are fighting, but I'm assuming it's because they either want each other's bikes, or it's about territory and everything else like that.
They're just like teenagers, aren't they? They just hate each other for whatever reason. They hate each other.
Well, yeah, and one of the things that I love to hate about these types of films, because it's the same in Evangelion, is the almost like the Japanese humor that you just drop in of randomness that you're not really too sure, which doesn't help with the understanding of the film sometimes, but also comes as maybe some sort of light relief.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of a scene now, and I can't remember.
Canada just sort of survives everything, and that in itself is quite funny. Like everyone around him is dying, and there's so many explosions going on, but he sort of falls down, and something drops beside him, and it goes oh, and he falls over.
I thought he had some sort of superpower, because there is a scene where I think someone's got his bike, or he's running towards someone who's on a bike, and
that's right, he jumps over them.
Jumps up and he jumps over it, and so I was like, oh, okay.
He's got plot armor, James. I think that's called plot armor.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Ben.
That's what Nathan would call it. Yeah, he could do anything because he's the hero. Why he's the hero, I don't know.
Was there anything particular that you liked about it at all, Rebecca? Strong female lead?
There was no strong female lead. You saw a poor girl have her top taken off her, so her breasts were on full view.
Yeah. And
she was nearly raped.
Yeah. And then she gets crushed by Tetsuo.
Yeah.
She gets punched in the face as well.
Yeah. Thanks. That's a positive. Well, Kay is in it. She's a strong female. She's a fighter for the resistance. There is some political commentary going on here. There are riots at the beginning because of the economic state of Tokyo.
Mm.
You're not sure about any of this, are you?
No. I can't. I'm sorry. I'm struggling to think of something positive that I liked about it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Fine.
Nathan, what did you like about it? Because this was your choice. So, what did you like about it? Let's rest on you for a little bit.
Well, I guess I think you know me. I'm a sucker for sci-fi and
a dystopian future.
Dystopian future, yeah. And this is just got everything in that. It's got pod racing from Star Wars. It's got laser weapons. It's got the military fighting some supernatural force. It's got
knife lasers.
It's got really, really good knife lasers. Exactly. It's got like secret underground scientific layers with plots upon plots and mystery. It's got really creepy stuff in it, like when the espers pretend to be the toys, and that sort of blink blong blink blong music, which is really quite creepy.
Yeah.
And the milk sort of pouring out of their eyes and out of their ears and things. The creepy stuff at the end where Tetsuo becomes the flesh monster and sort of the flesh baby. That I remember as a teenager. I remember that really upsetting me. I remember that being quite a disturbing thing, and I made it more than it was in my mind. I remember when we were watching this the other night, I was thinking to myself, oh god, that flesh monster thing's going to come up soon, and then it didn't really come up until like the last 10 minutes of the movie, and it was barely in it. I obviously was affected by it enough that I thought the movie had that in it quite early on, because it's like hands within hands within hands, and it's all stretching out. It kind of reminded me a bit of in Ghostbusters when Zool, not Zool, is it Zool? Oh, doesn't matter. The arms come out of the armchair and grab hold of Dana. Do you remember that bit?
Yeah.
It was a little bit like that because there's all these different hands and things. So, but there must be something good about it that I enjoy that, because I don't like horror and I don't like creepy body horror. But there's something about it.
It's extreme body horror though. That moment, when he's like screaming for help as well at that point, Tetsuo, because he's just completely lost control and he can't stop what is happening to him, and the government and all the secret science squad, they all know that this is about to get bad, because they're all reading all the readings that, well, this is what happened when Akira detonated, so oh dear, it looks like this is going to happen again. Yeah, I thought that was really good. I thought that was really good.
Well, the animation in that sequence. So I know you're struggling to find some good things, but you've got to admit the animation there was amazing.
My favourite bit of the film was that point where he sits down on the chair and he puts his arm on the arm of that concrete kind of chair thing.
Yeah.
And all of the wires in his metal hands start penetrating through the throne, and it looked like a throne to me. The concrete kind of throne thing. And I think that was where I was like, oh, this is interesting. What's going to happen next? Because finally it wasn't about explosions anymore, and it became about something else. And I think that what that thing was the idea that, this is all a metaphor for atomic energy, as Ben said. And it's about the fact that we actually, as human beings, cannot control that energy. We do not have the means. We should not have that power. We can't control it. We can't control the effects of it. There's no way to contain it. It does damage that we have no way of restraining or keeping with any kind of limits that, there's no way to regulate it. And I think that metaphor of the power inside Tetsuo, he no longer is in control. It's taking control of him. It is spurting out through this weakest part of his body, his arm, which, he's had his arm chopped off. He then gets that metallic arm, and then he gets shot in the arm. And suddenly that's the point where his arm bulges out. It becomes all veiny. It's like it's leaking out of him. He has this kind of leaky, weak body, and the power is having.
And it's not bloody, is it? It's fleshy.
It's not, and it's coming out of him through that particular gap or weakness in him, and then it completely overwhelms him and starts killing even the people that he cares about. And I think that's where it starts to get interesting, because it's about that idea of loss of control and
the destruction of the things around him as well. Like you say about the loved ones, but also when he's in that chair and all the wires go out, like when he stands up, it kind of rips out of him and rips the things apart. And when he starts turning to the flesh monster, he's destroying everything around him.
That thing about atomic energy, that you don't just destroy the thing you want to destroy, but you destroy everything within a huge radius around that. It's not a pinpoint. It's not a precise way of dealing damage. It's just a completely uncontainable power. And I think that's the point it's making. And actually, I think the name Akira in Japanese means bright. And that's quite interesting, because of the bright light that's emitted, that dome, that bright white dome that comes out from Akira at the beginning of the film and at the end of the film.
There's a beautiful video online by Nerdwriter1 about the light in Akira.
Oh, really?
The actual first shot of the movie after the bright white light is a neon like open sign that's sort of flickering, and the whole film has these different weird touches of light throughout. And if you think about it, it's animated. All that light is none of that's natural. Like, they haven't chosen where that is using a camera. They've had to draw that light. That's really.
I will link to that video in the notes of the podcast if people want to watch it. But that sounds good. By the way, Becca, thank you for highlighting in much more pristine wording than I could possibly ever use about the analogies in the film, because I stumbled over it, whereas you put more of a doctor's head on it. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it.
Look, I don't know if everyone else noticed there, but I think Rebecca liked part of this movie.
Yes, at the very end, Nathan. Right at the very end. I think it was. Oh, go ahead, Becca. Sorry, go ahead.
And the other thing just to add is, obviously, he becomes this big fleshy baby. Yeah. And I think that choice of it being a baby rather than any other form of human, again, is making that particular point of our utter helplessness.
Yeah.
And the fact that we can't, we can posture and act like manly army, officials, thinking like soldiers, like that one particular character says. He thinks like a soldier, and you've got those other old men around that council.
He thinks he's a hero because he puts a cape on him and stuff, doesn't he? He thinks he's like this emperor. He thinks he's this really
Tetsuo.
Yeah,
but I'm not talking about Tetsuo. I'm sorry. So when it's all the government officials who are in that underground, and they all have their own agendas, and they all have their own positions, and they all think that they have the way and the means to control this power. They all have their agenda of how they want to use this power for their own particular benefits. But at the end of the day, they are just babies themselves. They are just babies stomping around after their own selfish,
throwing things at each other, falling asleep at the desk.
They're not this, idea of an advanced, civilized, sophisticated, righteous, moral, just leader that any country would hope to have. It's all about individualism, and I think that idea of Tetsuo becoming that baby figure emphasizes the fact that that's kind of we're not as sophisticated or as advanced that we think we are. We're toddlers who just are selfish and want things for our own means and don't have any empathy or awareness of the effects that we have on the wider world.
But what you're saying about the effects on the wider world, the Colonel is part of that dialogue, that round table dialogue, and he is more or less the reason why Tetsuo becomes the way he is. He's sort of controlling him. He's influencing the power. So it is those people at the top, personified by the Colonel in this instance, letting down, air quotes, the little people. The kids who are in this down and out school, the worst school you can go to, the kids who are on the street riding bikes and fighting and taking drugs, and they've been let down by society.
Absolutely. That school, oh my goodness, that school, the way it's portrayed, it is so terrible. I mean, I wouldn't even call it a school.
No, but they even say, don't they, you're here because you've got nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was good, right? Everyone enjoyed it.
Ben, what were you going? What were you going to say?
I was going to say. I think at certain parts of the movie, it was good at showing and not telling. Don't get me wrong. There were bits, and possibly because it was the dubbed version that we watched, where people go up to screens and go such and such. Well, that means such and such. And it's like, okay, well, thank you for feeding us that, because we can't read Japanese or we don't know what's going on, what have you. But most of the time, with a lot of the action scenes, especially towards the end, with the big climactic battle at the end, a lot of it only makes sense right at the end of the film when you understand that the Espers and Akira have absorbed Tetsuo, taken him to according to the film, I guess, a pocket dimension away, stopped Neo Tokyo from completely exploding the way that original Tokyo did, and saved everyone. And it all sort of makes sense at the end, because it all sort of comes together. And I like that, the fact that the whole movie has to be taken as a whole for you to appreciate it fully. Whereas if you just see bits and pieces of it, you might go, this isn't for me. So I think you take the whole film as a whole, and I think on possibly multiple viewings, you'd probably get more out of it than just the one. And I think it's definitely not a film you want to watch if you're tired.
No.
Definitely not a film you want to watch if you're tired, because there is so much going on right from minute one that you have to be completely on your game when you're watching it. So I think, and that's not to say that anyone who does watch it and is put off by it definitely needs to watch it again, because if you don't like something, you don't like it, that's, don't worry about it, live your life. There's a lot of things to enjoy out there.
Yeah, there's plenty of anime out there. If you don't like this but you want to try anime, there's plenty out there. And JB, you're going to attest to that. You've watched a lot of anime that you enjoy as well.
Yeah, definitely.
What did we spoke earlier today, James, when we were at work, and you briefly alluded to the fact that you were halfway through thinking about turning this off, like you were with Strange Days.
Yeah.
What was it particularly that you didn't like?
I didn't like it's the jigsaw bit of the puzzle that really threw me quite a lot, and there seemed to be like lots of stuff that would lead me down an alley. There was the scene in the prison when
Kay and Canada were talking.
Yeah, and they were talking, and I was like, I think I even rewound it because I was like, what is she talking about?
I know.
In my head, I'm like, are you trying to stay away? Like what Becca said was, look, humans can't handle the power, so we shouldn't have the power. Because she started talking about like different life forms. I'm like, oh my god, mate, I'm not that intelligent. Just tell me how it is. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely don't think that Kaneda understood what she was saying.
No,
considering the kind of school we saw him go to, he's not going to put that kind of logic.
He was like the character. He was like the lead character in the Cool Gang of Greece or something. He's not got like, he can't chuck anything together. Trying to then go into some sort of deeper meaningful with him, like he's just scratching his head. He's just scratching his head, as I was scratching my head to be completely honest at that point, and then things start coming together nicely, but it didn't seem to want to just grab my attention to make me to go. I mean, like you said, start was great. I think the anime was great. Violence wasn't quite prepared for it, even though I guess because you're watching a cartoon. Was it needed? Probably not. But or the goriness of it, or as Becky, you've already mentioned about the scene with the female character.
Oh yeah, that was uncomfortable to watch. That was very uncomfortable to watch.
And then I just wanted it just to speed up. There were just things in there that I didn't think were relevant, but thanks to Ben sending me a YouTube clip of about 10 minutes, then pulled everything together. I was like, done.
You shouldn't need a YouTube clip to explain a film to you.
No, because sometimes you don't. But it's nice to. Sometimes it's nice to not get something or have an answer out of a film. But I felt like this film needed to give me an answer.
Again, I will link that YouTube video as well, which is a different one to the one you mentioned, Nathan, in the podcast notes for the show.
I think I wholeheartedly agree with you, James. I think this film takes so long to tell you anything, and when it does tell you, it doesn't tell you what it tells you half of the truth or half of the puzzle or even less, and it does it in this weird way where people don't talk to each other like they talk like normal people talk. They kind of like said what seemed to be big philosophical statements that actually made no sense, and also didn't respond to what the previous person said to them. There doesn't seem to be any discourse in this film. It's just a series of people saying lines.
It's so a comic book. So I saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse recently, and that was outstanding, and was like a comic book coming alive on the screen. For me, it was the comic book didn't come alive on the screen, and it felt like I was there's pauses between the scenes of when I'm turning a
Right.
page in a comic book, and then me for somehow forgetting what the next thing was, and I'm having to turn back to go, oh yeah, that's what it was, and now I can continue with the story. That's what it felt like. I mean, that's probably pretty weird, actually. But anyway.
No, I think I know what you mean, James, and I think this goes back to what Becca was saying in the bit that we were talking about what she liked, and Becca said the bit that she didn't like. But like the middle part of the movie goes so fast, but also nothing much happens in
No.
that middle part of the film, and there's
no
almost
change,
an
is there?
awful lot that could just be chopped out and thrown away, and you could have got to where we were going a lot faster. Like this film could have been a 60-minute absolute like mind-blowing experience, but instead it's like a whatever hour 45-minute 2-hour movie.
It's just
And
2.5.
it's fine.
I think it's 2.5.
Is it really? Whatever it is, I don't know. Whatever it is, it feels like there's a lot that happens in the middle that doesn't need to happen, could get cut out. Again, it's another one of these films that we've chosen where a lot happens that you could lose, or doesn't happen and you could lose it, and it doesn't feel like you'd lose a lot from the overall story. Go ahead, Becca.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think that there's some really interesting. So there's a bit that's interesting where you're seeing Tetsuo develop these powers. So that scene, like just after the near rape happens, where he starts hallucinating, and he sort of, he sees the ground open up. His like innards start spilling out, and you see him without the hallucination trying to push his innards back into himself. Like that was really intriguing, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Why is he hallucinating in this way? And then when he's in the hospital or the research facility, he again starts to have all these hallucinatory dreams of little toys, creeping up his pillow. And I was thinking, this is really interesting. What is this, meant to be saying? But then it wasn't actually saying anything. There were no particular reasons for these hallucinations. Yeah. And I just think that time could have been so much better spent, him reflecting on this power, him perhaps trying to experiment with his power, seeing what he can do, so that there's a more gradual build up to the point we get to later. I just don't know what those, I mean, the hallucinations were interesting in themselves, but what purpose were they serving? I don't know. It just added further confusion to the film by not explaining. And then just a quick example of one of the points where a statement was made that presumably was meant to add clarity, but I just felt like it was just being pulled out of somebody's arse, was where the scientist is looking at those patterns. I don't know what these patterns are meant to be. Brainwaves. And all of a sudden he's watching these patterns interact with each other, and all of a sudden he goes, oh, this must mean a new universe is being created. And I just threw my hands up and was like, what? Where have you got that from? Where was the lead up for that? How were we meant to figure that out without that statement? Like, what logic have you drawn this from? And I just, that's an example. I just like, I give up trying to understand what this film is telling me.
I completely agree.
That's one of the moments where it tells and doesn't show. That's definitely one of the moments where it tells and doesn't show, not shows and doesn't tell. Yeah, definitely.
And that's what I mean at the beginning when I said, like, when it's doing its action scenes, I think it's absolutely fantastic. But the bits in between, just they make no sense, and they don't even try to make sense.
There's the script writers on Star Trek. Certainly the Next Generation, I guess in other series as well, when they have to explain a sciencey thing in Star Trek speak, they just put into the script science, and then they move on with whatever, like Riker or Picard or whomever is saying, Worf, what have you, and then they get a scientist guy who actually is a scientist fill in what the science of the situation actually is. It feels like in this anime they didn't have that science guy on hand, and they just made it up as they went along.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, these brainwaves mean a pocket universe is being, and like you go, what? Where does that come from? What?
Yeah.
But it's my question I was going to ask, because what you were saying, Becca, about the little plink plonk plink, the little weird toy thing is coming to life, and that time could have been like showing how he's possibly losing control of whatever his reality is could have been highlighted better. But my question is, Nathan, is that in the manga, that scene?
Oh gosh, you're asking me now because I read them through lockdown and I read them quite quickly. I don't think the toys like that is in it. And I'm
But
gonna
possibly
someone's
the-
screaming at
possibly
saying it is now.
Possibly the creepy kids doing something to tease him in a different way or test him or whatever it is they were doing. Again,
Yeah, there's
God knows.
definitely more of that. There's more of that element to it. But I feel like when I was reading it, I felt like this movie was the first bit that kind of got out the way quite quickly, and then the bit that I read more was this post-apocalyptic section. So I don't really remember, is the honest answer.
Okay.
I actually really loved that bit. I thought that was really, like you say, really interesting. But I do agree that it wasn't necessarily
Helpful.
It wasn't explained or called back to at any point.
No.
I very much like that. There's one thing that I did like was when the alarms are going off in the hospital and like they realize that Tetsuo is out of his room, or not, they call him by his name, they call him by whatever number he is.
Yeah.
And they run to him and they're like, okay, come on, you've got to get out of your room. And then I'd say the camera pulls back, but obviously it's not, it's a drawing, but it's from the far end of a corridor and you see it like far away and it just goes dark and they all sort of explode out. And I just thought that's a really well shot action scene, because you don't really see what's going on, but you know that none of those guys are alive anymore. He's just brutally exploded them all, and it's nasty.
It's terrifying, and it's a statement that he's the villain at that point.
Yes.
You're like, before that, you're like, oh, okay, maybe he's the hero. Maybe he's going through something that he'll come out of. But at that point, you're like, oh no, he just exploded those guys.
Yeah, definitely.
What?
What, James? What?
I think is he the villain? Is he just
He's a victim.
he is a victim. I would say he's a victim, not a villain, because he is having a normal life and then he has an interaction with a little green goblin that unlocks his telekinetic or psychic powers, that he then has been captured and the government want to work on him, and then he is having all this weird shit going to him, like he's taken LSD or something like that, and then all of a sudden he's coming to terms with it, and then he gets a Superman complex and thinks he can do everything and destroy everything, and then the power gets too much, and then he turns into a horrible baby, and then people have to save him and then save Tokyo. So I disagree that he's the villain.
So the Colonel is the villain.
The system is the villain.
I don't know if there is a villain.
Well, maybe that's the failing. Maybe that's one of the failings of the movie then, because you don't have anyone to dramatically point your aggression and frustration at.
Yeah.
Because if that is the case, and I agree with you to some extent, you do feel like Tetsuo has had a rough deal here, because even from the beginning, when he's sitting on Kaneda's bike, he's kind of gets a bit teased by Kaneda. He gets teased by the other biker gangs. He gets left behind. He's trying to prove himself all the time. He accidentally gets a mistake. So I do see what you're saying. He is the victim. He is kind of the runt of the.
But his friends are. He is the butt of all jokes. But Kaneda is trying to help him and support him, and you see that in a flashback where he gives him his whatever. He's in some sort of school or something, and the kids picked on him, orphanage or something like that. So yeah, I guess in the villain would be that short impy character who looks like a bunny with a big front teeth.
Yeah,
who is basically the politician who's playing off Ryu. And I was asking, and every time I saw that name, I was thinking, "Where's Ken?" Because of Street Fighter 2. Sorry, that was in my head. So he's the one who's trying to play everybody off to get political power, and unfortunately, the group are the outputs of that. But it was by a chance meeting that the psychic abilities were released.
I think so. So I think what you're saying there is that's linked back to what you were saying. The system is the problem, but
Yeah.
the system can be personified by the government officials in this, who are all corrupt. Even the colonel to some extent, because he starts the coup happening, and that's in itself. He's not doing that for any positive reason. He's doing it because he wants to control things, not because he
Yeah.
thinks he should do.
Doesn't want to give up power, does he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we can all universally agree that having talked it out for an hour, we all enjoyed this movie, and it was a great choice.
I would like to watch it again. I won't hurry to watch it again, but I would if someone, if I didn't have anything to do and have anything else to watch, and I just thought, oh, maybe I'll give it another try. I would happily do it, but I won't rush to it, if that makes any sense whatsoever. I don't think it does.
Well,
Maybe-
Ben,
sorry.
no. Well, yeah, I'm continuing now. Sorry, no. If you'd like this, I would definitely recommend Evangelican, and it's on Netflix. I think you've got all the episodes, and then there are some films as well. And I'll need to remember what I said last time. I think you could get away with watching, and they're 20 minutes, and I think there's 26 episodes. It is a bit crazy. I mean, it is really random. Yeah.
I'll look
You
it
might
up.
like it.
Thanks,
Ben.
JB.
Yeah, put
I'll
it
look it
on
up.
your list, but don't watch it before Succession. Have you watched Succession yet?
Not yet.
Okay, yeah, don't watch it before that.
I haven't watched Yellowstone yet either. No, I know.
Ben, you're missing out.
I know. I'm sorry. It's on the list. Don't worry. It's on the list. Christmas is coming. It's on the list.
What I was going to say, Ben, was if you are interested in Akira more, and you are thinking that you might watch it again, maybe the right thing to do is to read the mangas, because you love comic books as well, and so
Yes,
maybe
I
it
do.
would actually be the story again, but fleshed out a bit more. No pun intended.
Oh yeah, very good. Yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe I will. Maybe I'll borrow that. Maybe I'll borrow that off of you, Nathan. Thank you.
So I think that's it. If we finished talking about this movie now?
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, if I was going to score it, if I'm going to score it out of 10,
Yeah.
I'd give it a solid 6.5 out of 10. I think, because from what you've said, it's half of a story, right?
Yeah.
So that feels about right. Yeah, 6.5 out of 10.
JB, what would you score it?
I would score it that I liked it more than the other two films.
Okay, that's a good score. I like
Including your own. I love that you liked it more than your own.
We need to remember. It wasn't that I really liked Split Second. It was one of the first and only films that I named that you both hadn't seen. And Ben, I thought about another film the other day. Have you seen Jean-Claude Van Damme's Cyborg?
Yes.
That is a good film.
I still think that you chose Split Second because you wanted to torture Rebecca. That's why you chose Split Second.
I would
Frank.
Yes. Sorry, prank. Yeah, not torture. Prank. Yes.
Did you want to give this a score or a review? A quick score?
Your review is allowed to be. Ugh.
My review is: if you want something to fall asleep to, go for it.
Yeah,
Excellent.
and you know me, I'm not going to give it an out of 10 or anything, but I enjoyed it. Not as much as I remembered, but I did enjoy it.
It's funny how of all these three films that we recommended, we all remembered them better than they actually were.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
We all remembered them being a much better film than they were in 2020. I don't know. That was fun.
Do you think that's because your standards have changed, or do you think that's just because they've not aged well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's both. I think they haven't aged well. None of these films have aged well, and I think that no one on this podcast, or even listening to this podcast, the 5 people that do, can say that they are the same person if they were alive in 1995 or 1986 or 1992, whenever these films all came out. If you're the same person now that you were then, you haven't evolved as a human being in any way, shape, or form. I don't think anyone in the world can that was alive in those times and can say I am the same person then that I am now. I like the same things. I have the same complete hobbies and passions and all that sort of thing. People evolve, people change, people grow, don't they? And you get to experience new things, and your tastes widen as you grow as a human being, don't you think? Maybe.
I mean, most people, I would hope, have grown in just this year. I mean, this year has been a transformative year for everyone.
Yes,
so I
absolutely
agree with you.
We are on month 67 of 2020, so it's everyone's grown quite a lot.
Well, speaking of it being month 67, we're very, very close to the end of this year, and that means Christmas break. It means festive times. It means happy, glowy, warm fuzzy feelings. So we're gonna handbrake turn away from dystopians, away from sci-fi movies, away from movies that none of us have seen and all of us think are kind of okay but not that great. We're gonna drive full throttle into schmaltzy, lovely, warm, fuzzy Christmas movies, a trilogy of Christmas movies. Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be watching our three of our most enjoyed, some Christmas movies. I don't know how we're categorizing this.
Most nostalgic.
Maybe. And we're going to start off next week with JB, your choice.
Oh, are we?
We are.
Oh shit! Sugar.
The 1995,
Probably
1994 version of Miracle on 34th Street.
Hey. Do you know I've never seen it? I've never seen it.
Wow, really?
Never seen it. No,
Oh,
never
you are
seen it.
going to be crying week after week after week.
Ben cries. I don't know. Ben cries at Formula One.
I cry at dog food adverts on TV, Rebecca. Okay, I'll cry at anything.
Oh, you better man up, my pedigree chum.
That's very good, James. That was very good.
So,
very good.
Ben, where can people get in touch with us to tell us what they thought of Akira, and also in preparation for Miracle on 34th Street, what they think of that? Where can they get in touch with us and tell us their thoughts?
So they can do that on social media, Nathan. Thank you very much for asking. I will tell you, we're on Twitter, which is twitter.com/nerdschatting, facebook.com/nerdschatting, and instagram.com/nerdschatting. You can send Nathan an email, which is nerdschatting@outlook.com. This podcast is available on Podbean and Spotify and Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, other podcast apps are available. We're probably on those as well, in tune, that sort of thing. If you feel like it, leave us a review. That would be great. Or tell someone that you know who likes listening to the podcast to listen to our podcast, because we've got a little bit of cred these days because we've got a doctor on board. I know, right? It's amazing.
I don't think I give any cred.
We've got a bit of street cred. Not only do we have a guy who's got a first-class degree in film studies, we've got a doctor on this podcast, all right? You know, and a couple of idiots in James and I. I think that's it. That's it.
That's it. Yeah. So we'll be back next. Well, we're recording on Wednesday. Whenever it's released, who knows?
End of next week sometime.
Great. Thank you very much for tuning in, everybody.
Thanks for having me back. Bye.
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 Kaneda!
I wanna grab both your shoulders and shake, baby. Snap out of it. I get the feeling I left it too late, but baby, snap out of it. The cloud wash don't continue to swing on the back. Lady Francis having a sing. I'll be here waiting ever so patiently for you to snap out of it.
Look at my hair. I'm a business.